live. We're just trying to get onto Shannon Nielsen's Facebook. Welcome, happy Sunday. We're back together again in South Dakota, and it's been awesome to have them here.
Start.
I haven't quite yet. We just need to wait for a second. Keep going. Yeah.
These guys are kind of freezing though because they're from Florida.
Yes, we are.
Very
Even
cold
though
up
we're
there.
loving this weather, 70s, perfect.
All right, guys. You always gotta make you wait, right?
You do it sideways?
No, it goes sideways.
Let's start by.
Maybe so far away. Is everyone? Kind of.
You got a good view of Stacy.
We could kind of tilt it to whoever who's talking.
Plus,
Hey, we're here.
Our husbands are
Thanks
too.
for joining us, guys. And guess where we're at? We're in South Dakota. Oh, yeah. We're in South Dakota with these two lovelies, and we're glad to be here. We actually had that trip to Utah kind of extend to South Dakota to
We're
be with
so
them for a
excited
week.
they could be with us. It's awesome.
It's been really nice.
So today we're going to be talking about what the faces of grief, the different faces of grief, the different kinds of grief, I guess, that you go through. And then in following little conversations this month, we're going to expand on those. So I'll just name them. And there's no specific order. That's the thing. Like, you can't read a book on grief and say, okay, I'm going to follow these guidelines, because everyone is going to go through denial at different times or anger at different times. So grief is a universal thing, and there's no specific way that you should grieve. Everyone's going to grieve differently. And I wrote something down here, and it said, in bereavement, we spend different lengths of time working through each step in different orders. Look to these phases not as stringent order of things, but rather as a guide. Everyone grieves differently. I love that. So don't think that because I've experienced, say, anger at a different time than Shannon's experienced it. And so don't think that there needs to be a specific, oh, I should be feeling this way, but I'm not. Just know that as you walk through grief, these things are going to come, and it's good to know, like, oh, so what is that? What is this? What am I feeling right now? And kind of put a name to it so that you can kind of address it better. And so the first one is,
before you go, one of the things I think is also important to realize is that grief, by definition, doesn't segregate. The rich, the poor, the single, the family, the sick, the healthy, everybody at some point in life is going to deal with grief, whether it's a loss of a loved one, whether it's some other sort or type of grief. And so these things are also applicable to all, and it's not something that only a few humans that walk on this earth experience. All of us experience grief at different stages in our life. And the types of grief that we will mention tonight, or the phases of grief, as we've said, so identifying who that is, or that stage of grief, there may be other stages that other experts may include in this, and these are not exhaustive titles, but they are, I think, a very accurate generalization of the stages of grief. And we might not even hit, some people in their grieving might not even have one of these issues at all.
So
So there's
it's-
not a certain path.
So you don't have to feel like you have to feel all of them, because there are certain ones that I haven't felt yet because I'm kind of at the beginning part. They've been in it for 3 years, and there's certain ones that they've felt more than I have, and so I think that's one thing is people have reached out to me saying, "What do I supposed to be feeling right now?" Or "Is this right to feel this way?" There is no certain way to feel, and so you feel the way you feel, and I think that's the biggest thing is allowing yourself to have permission to feel what you're feeling.
Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is denial and isolation. And so,
So we're gonna actually get this camera kind of so we can see everybody
okay,
instead
we're
of
just
just a
fixing
few of
the
you.
camera, sorry.
Do you want me to just hold it when it so
Why don't you just hold it?
I gotta get too far back.
So we're just going to list the 5 that we have identified. So the first one is denial and isolation, second, anger, third, bargaining, fourth, depression, and fifth, acceptance. And so remember, there's no order. We just numbered them and just, so Shannon and Josh are going to talk about denial and isolation and what that looks like, identify what that looks like.
You can start with denial if you want to.
Sure. So I think one of the big things is obviously with denial is that you aren't accepting that this is happening. There's a process that you're like, this can't be happening to me. This isn't real. This isn't, this isn't my life. This is a dream. That was definitely what I felt I was going through. And I say I because like sometimes when you're with your spouse, that you have to realize just because you're with someone doesn't mean you're experiencing the same thing they are at the moment. Like we are all different, and that was really evident when we were at the hospital that we'll talk about later. But part of that denial is like I absolutely did not like this. This is a movie. This happens to someone else or other things I've seen, but not in my life. And so not accepting the reality that was happening was absolutely occurring during the first, especially the first few days for me. But with that said, as weeks and now we're in months have gone by, there's still sometimes I wake up and I still go back to that denial. Like this is not real. I think my little girl's going to wake up and climb out of her crib and come and grab me again. So it's a process that is absolutely real. But once you realize that this is part of it, you have to ask yourself, I'm not crazy. But this is part of the process of grieving and understanding it and not thinking that, why am I so weird? Because it was really hard for me. I'd waken up and I'm like, why am I still having this dream? Why am I still thinking every morning she's going to wake up and denying that would happen? So I absolutely can relate to how denials worked on this process for me.
Well, I think it definitely is you deny the reality of the situation. So for a while, I didn't even want to go to that point of my daughter has died. She's not going to be with us every single day was us waking up. And I think it was a common defense mechanism so that we were actually feeling the numbing emotions, like we were being numb and we were isolating ourselves. We would try to stay in bed because the night before we hadn't slept very much. So we just wanted to stay in bed when you'd wake up and you don't want to be around all these people at first. And since it's COVID-19, I was actually kind of afraid, like, we'd be so isolated and there would be no helping hands or people wanting to serve us, but it was the exact opposite even during COVID-19.
Well, we didn't want to wake up to see just the people that were there at the house. That was just Casey and Josh that were
there. They seriously kept down the fort, and so that was a big tender mercy because I didn't feel like I had to perform as a mom at that time in the ways of saying like I had to take care of the home. Are my kids okay? Like the kids were completely okay. Stacey was taking care of the house. She was feeding them. She was doing all those things, and I was able to grieve.
We didn't make breakfast for the first 2 weeks while you're there, right?
And Josh too. Oh yes, get him too. Josh too.
Yeah. So I don't remember ever making breakfast for the first couple of weeks while they're there, and so I remember coming up. It was like 11 o'clock, 10:30, sometimes.
Still be in our pajamas.
Yeah,
like,
and just
our eyes are like I literally got my black eyes from those first 2 weeks of just crying and being in the isolation of not wanting to do anything and not even knowing if there was really a point of not living, but a point of doing anything and having a desire to do it, right?
Yeah, but don't you think like as soon as you wake up and you have to get ready, like reality hits, like
Mhm.
as long as you're still sitting in bed, you're still like, I'll see her downstairs or she's with the kids or
Mhm.
like life hasn't begun until you leave, the realm of your room,
Well, and I just read too that this whole denial is a common defense mechanism for us as human beings.
Sure.
And it numbs us from our emotion. So that's like our body, like we've gone through this like initial like such a hard thing, but our body like kicks in and it like our emotions like go to this denial which numbs us, which we need. You need that at the first bit, right?
Yeah.
Because you are in the shock of a lifetime.
And anytime you set your life off of its center
Oh yeah.
core, like if, for example, any time in life where you're demanded to change, where you didn't plan on
Yeah,
you
that
have a
change,
choice.
like you lose
Wow.
a job or something happens traumatic that was forced into your life, there is this, maybe it's a mini, but there still is this thing of denial, almost a denial of responsibility, like I don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to deal with it, but I also don't want to deal with it. It's not natural to want to embrace something that's thrust into your life, hard, traumatic, crisis.
It's
Traumatizing.
traumatizing. Yeah, it's traumatizing.
Yeah.
It was very traumatizing.
Well, I remember the first time that helped us with that denial was remember when we had all those friends and family and ward members that came over to our house
Oh
and
my gosh.
they came over to help us do like a memorial site in our backyard for Layla. And I remember I came to him like, Shan, you've got to come out and
Yeah, it was like 11 o'clock, and I remember I was still in my pajamas, and I just barely was crying with my mom, and I was just like on the phone, like in the bed, just fetal position. Mom was there, and then my friend comes in. She's like, Shannon, can I just come in? I'm like, come in. She like came into my bed and she cuddled me too, and we were just all bawling. And then Josh comes up and he's like, Shannon, look outside, and I'm like, what? What's going on? And I didn't want to really be around everyone. I knew there was people downstairs, but I'm like, no, I'm just good here. I'm so emotional. And then I looked outside and there was 30 people just helping with everything that was going on. They were totally clearing this area. And I remember at that moment thinking, I can sit here and continue to feel bad for myself, or I can look at what's happening good in my life. It was like I had to see the good that was happening. And then I could go down, and at that moment I was like, I need to go give these people hugs because they have been my biggest cheerleaders during this time. And that's what brought me that little piece of joy, or should I even say that little piece of thinking it would be okay,
Little
and
light at the end of the tunnel.
little light, yeah, allowing myself to go there, even though it was hard to see anybody because they knew that I would just cry, and I did just cry. They were ready for that, and some people didn't even know what to say, but it was good for me just to get out and go and do that hard thing,
And with that numbing, I think comes just because even though you didn't want to probably get up out of bed, you did, but it kind of like you were numb in a sense, right?
I was numb because I didn't really feel, and at certain times I couldn't even cry. When
Yeah.
people were crying, I'm just like, sorry, I
So
have
if we
no more
didn't,
tears left.
if we didn't have that numbing mechanism, it would be impossible, to even like
feel it all.
do anything. And it's what like carries us through the next wave of what's to come,
Well, and one of the things that is a natural thing that when you're in that state of denial is another one of the stages is anger. Oftentimes when you're in that denial, oftentimes I think leads to an anger because you realize that there's a frustration or a disruption in your life that you didn't control or cause or something. And even if you did, it still is easy to move on to that. So anger and blame is another
the
stage
next
of
one, yeah.
grief that we might experience ourselves with.
Yeah. And I remember the psychiatrist came into my room at the hospital. I had broken my collarbone, my shoulder, and my toe, and half of my face was black. My eyeball was black. I was in rough shape and I couldn't hardly move, or it made me really dizzy.
Tell them first, you were in a car accident.
Yeah.
You tell them that.
Oh, I was in a car accident, and that's how we lost our daughter Lily. But I remember a psychologist came in, and he just talked to me about certain things, and he just said one of the phases of grief is anger, and I was just like kind of afraid of anger. I'm like, what? Like, anger is not a good thing. Like, I shouldn't like. At that moment, I was still in that like numb shock. And still like worried about like, am I gonna be able to sit up or am I gonna be able to stand today? Like that kind of thing. And so I was just kind of scared about like, when is this anger going to come into my life? Because no one likes to be angry, the feeling that you have when you're angry. And so I was just, anyways, and that didn't happen to me until like a year after she passed away. I didn't have it. It was just, and with anger kind of comes the blame too. And I was the one driving, and I did have all of that, like, I'm the one to blame. I was driving, but it was an absolute tender mercy, a gift. I tried to go to that place, and it's like Lily would not let me. I had tried to like feel like, I don't know. She wouldn't let me,
Your
and
tender
it was
mercy.
like a gift to me that I never felt that in my heart. But I definitely had the anger, and it was, yeah, it's like the reality, even though I'd been going through it for a year and it was reality and I'd had so much pain, it like reemerged. It like came back. I don't know, like the intense pain. Because it kind of had like, as you live life, it never, like, the pain of losing them isn't like gone. It's just not as constant. And so I was just angry. Like I was angry
Who
that
are you angry
I was
at?
angry that it happened. Like I knew it was meant to be, and that it was her time to go. I was angry at God. Like I just wanted to kick it all in the face. So I was just like, I know this is whatever, but I just want to kick it in the face because I want Lily back.
So it's,
And then,
it's normal.
yeah.
It's okay to be angry at God, is it?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
And
that
you
was the
did some
question.
people.
The reason why I'm asking this is because I'll be honest, when everything didn't turn out with my little Layla and I had to walk home without a baby, I felt like if I am mad at God, I have not had the faith, nor do I have the commitment to God. And I thought that I'd be disappointing God at that time. And I know there's a lot of you who are feeling the same way, who you do blame yourself, who you continue to go to that anger and you continue to go to that blaming. And I want you to know this is a normal feeling, you guys. This is not something that you have to, I thought that I had to be like my sister. When she said she never blamed herself, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I blaming myself? And I got really down on myself and almost started like attacking myself for being evil in a way. And so I want you to know there's going to be different ways. She's lucky to not have ever felt that. For me, even though my husband and myself, we've committed to not blame each other because we were both thought each other had the baby and it was a total accident. There's times and in my mind I'm continuing to look at the tragedy that happened with our baby, and I keep on thinking it's my fault, and then Josh thinks it's his fault, and we continue using this blaming thing. But when you go there, you destroy all the peace that can be brought from God. And so she's lucky that she got that. I didn't get that gift of not blaming myself, but I have to like train my mind to not blame myself, and I have to allow myself to not go there because it just is dark and it's deep and it hurts and it's not right. It's not ever what will bring you to become closer to your daughter or son or anyone that you've lost.
Well, and I think another thing with that is like, it's not like it all comes at once. Like fragments of this come throughout the day, right? Some days you may be angry, some days you may be mad, but like the blame game for me, I mean, we've talked about not blaming ourselves, but I would have to say it's almost humanly impossible to not go down that road.
Yeah, in some aspect.
In some aspect,
Yeah.
totally. And then you have to correct yourself, because I mean, many times me and my wife are like, we can't go down there. So because for someone to say, hey, don't blame yourself, when it's late at night or early in the morning and you're all by yourself and you're thinking about the situation,
The one thing you could have done differently.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, there was a lot of things we could have done differently, you know. And then and then I mean, I had a phone call from some random lady. She's like, who was supposed to be watching them? And I'm just like, I was. And
I
you
could have
know,
said I was, right?
and-
Like that's the thing.
and at those moments, like, yeah, people bring up conversations, your mind, your own thought process. But once you go there, you have to realize, is this really, like, is this going to make a difference? Like, she's not going to come back. I'm gonna be more bitter. I'm gonna be more mad. You know, is this going to affect my kids, my family? And the answer is all of it. And I had an individual, a man, once tell me, and this was happening a few weeks ago, and he told me, he's like, thank goodness I have kids, because if I didn't have kids, I don't know if I would pull through this, because they allowed me or forced me to raise up to a higher standard. And the more I think about it, I think for some, that might be totally true. Like me and Shannon talked about, we can't lose all 5 of our kids because of this. And so our children have made us realize like we've got to be able to put this in a healthy situation. Not perfect. I don't know what perfect looks like, but at the point where, I've met individuals that they've 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road, they've said they've never, ever forgiven themselves, or they're bitter and angry and they're just
And that's
ticked
their
off
life, is they're
at
angry all the
life
time.
all the time.
And so I think the important part of what we're trying to say tonight is that to recognize that these are phases.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily, all of these phases are probably appropriate, and some of them may be more unhealthy than others, but hopefully the message for us is just recognizing that it's
What they
okay
are,
to
and it's
recognize
okay.
where you might be at, and that
Yeah.
it's okay to be feeling that. I
Just
think
work
across
through
the
it.
board, all of us, we have to get through our grief, or we have to at least, if we're going to carry grief with us, we're going to need to recognize what part of that grief is with us so that we can move forward.
And also another thing is, like I talked about, I was angry at God, or you could be angry at your higher power. You could also resent the person who is deceased for leaving us. I read a book called The Message, and this lady lost her husband. She was mad at him, really
Very
mad.
mad, like to the point that she said, "I hate you." Like, I hate you.
For leaving her. She had 7 children, and so she was mad at
Major financial
angry at him.
issues too.
Yeah. And so, and then you could go into the realm of, or the wheel. I feel guilty for being
Surviving.
angry, and then you're more angry.
And why did I survive? Why did they die and I didn't die? You know, you can go to that thing too.
So there's all
I think
these
the main thing
things
too
to
with God,
recognize.
with God though, you don't go there for a long time. You can be mad, but my sister said, and I will always repeat this because it's helped me so much. But you can be mad for a time, but then you need to leave that position too. You don't stay there the
Don't
whole
stay
time
there.
and for years and years and let that. That's not healthy.
And
That's not good.
I think that's the case with any of these stages is you recognize what they are, but also in that recognition, it's kind of like I love donuts, and if I was out of my mind, I would just eat donuts all the time. But it's important for me, it might sound dumb, but it's important for me to recognize that they're not healthy for me if that's all I stay. But it's perfectly fine for me to have a donut every once in a while, right?
Right.
Moderation in all things.
So, yeah. In other situations, Stacy and I didn't have really deal with this stage of grief, the bargaining stage, which many people find themselves in. But Josh and Shannon, I think, were in a unique situation in this.
Well,
So just kind of
real briefly, yeah, the bargaining took place because of the situation. When I was giving her CPR, her life was in my hand. So I absolutely was making bargains right then and there. Like, Heavenly Father, I promise that I will give up this, this, and this, and do this, and this, and this, if you save her life. And throughout that process and into the hospital, I absolutely was bargaining. And one of my biggest bargains, I was just like, if you need someone, take me instead of her. I will go instead of her place. So that definitely took place. And some of those bargains I made with my father, right now I've still kept. I haven't done those ever since. And one of them, I'll just share it here, is I was really frustrated. I left the family on a phone call, and then I was scrolling through my phone, playing on my phone. And I was so mad that I was doing that. So I told myself I'll never, ever, have stuff on my phone to look at, whether it's sports or anything. And so I deleted everything, all the apps, everything. And my a good friend of mine once said, he said, do you know what? Maybe this is just a wake-up call for you to be more involved. And I hope so. But I'm sad that I had to have this type of wake-up call to feel like that. And that was kind of my bargaining, but I didn't come out the way I wanted. The bargain didn't go to the way
I think
we
we
use
use
a
it
big, like, if only, right, with bargaining. If
Yeah.
only
Well, that's
had
what I
done
said.
this, or
Well, when I was on before, God, I was talking to my God because that's what we believe completely, and we're very religious. But there's some other people who believe in a different higher power. When I was going there, I was basically, if only this would happen, then I'd be happy. Or only, like, God, you know what I need. This is what I need. And we thought that we knew what we needed, but it postpones the inevitable, and that's one thing that we do not have power over. And I think so many people are like, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? you guys, there's a plan much higher than us. And I think that's what has given me the common peace. Like, even if she didn't drown, even if she didn't die in a car accident, we believe that literally she would have died a different way and it could have been worse. And so I know it's hard to have it happen to us, but as I've thought about bargaining, I definitely went there. Even now I go there to bargaining, like, God, if I can feel Layla around me more, I'll do this more. You know, I bargain like, I'm gonna be closer to you. I'm gonna devote an hour to you today, and then I don't do it. And I'm all sad at myself. And I think bargaining is a big thing that I do to myself daily almost, actually. Like, did I get to talk to Layla today? Did I feel her spirit? What did I do? And what am I not doing? And then I kind of bargain again with God, making commitments and promises with him, right? It's not unusual to feel so desperate that you are willing to do almost anything to alleviate or minimize the pain. It causes us to consider any way we can avoid the current pain or the pain that we will anticipate or the loss that we are feeling. And I think that's so true with bargaining. I mean, it's not a bad thing to do, and don't feel bad for doing it. Just know that it may not always end up the same, the way that we want it to happen, you know?
Yeah, your deal you make may not come to pass the way you were hoping or praying for or
I
expecting.
think one of the things that with bargaining also is it relates to sometimes you can become angry, sometimes you can, you know, like, so these stages or cycles can
Kind of all
go
inclusive almost.
back and forth,
Yeah.
like Josh said. Many of them might hit all of them in one day.
There,
And one of the, go ahead.
oh, there's just a picture I saw. It had all of these in a circle, written in a circle, and then there's just arrows going like
In
every
every
way,
direction.
and in the middle it's going in every way. So it's just like this cyclical thing that just keeps going, and you just, I think it's good to say, okay, this is what this is. This is how I'm going to face it, you know.
And I know for me, one of the things that I've dealt with Lily's loss is depression. Like, that was something that, I mean, I don't consider myself necessarily a depressed person generally, and I'm defining depression as those times in my day where I just didn't want to get up, or I didn't want to go to bed, or I didn't want to feel like doing the things that I needed to do, whether it was associated with work, or whether it was associated with church or school or whatever it might
Or you
be.
just have
Children
like,
even
or
finding
you
that
just
Yeah,
have that
I didn't want
like,
to be a
yeah,
dad for, you know, kind of a,
not feeling joy, like, do I deserve to feel joy after this?
and you just have that heaviness and that constant brokenness that you're just like, it won't lift. It's just like, because I'm a very normally happy person, and like, but I would just be like, kind of like, like, go about my day. And if I saw people like, yeah, doing good, kind of thing.
Put on the happy face.
Yeah.
you become kind of apathetic, or
Yeah.
you don't see hope. You kind of have a sense of despair. There's a hopelessness, a despair, the motivation for, I mean, the motivation to be positive is just gone. And
Or
if you,
too much.
yeah, or so you're just sitting, you're kind of in what I would say is kind of like a state of limbo where you just are kind of, maybe that's that numb
I felt
feeling
like I
that-
was in like a haze. I really did. And I was a zombie going through this haze. I really did. I'm like, this is like I felt like I was in a movie, like you said. Like, you're just in a haze, and is this real life? Like, I don't even, this can't be my life, you know? Like,
Well,
real life.
we're not even 2 months into the journey, and I feel like I've had little snippets of depression because I'm usually that person that gets up. I have this checklist to do all day long. I'm doing until the end of the night. This is the longest time that I've ever gone without that checklist and doing because I've been able to feel the emotion of what it is, you know, and I'm allowing myself to feel it because I feel like if I don't allow this, it's going to come way later and it may be more damaging to my family. But I think depression, it's all different. I have friends who feel depression all the time, and it creates anxiety. It creates their non-ability to live in joy.
And there are
happiness
obviously
too,
like
so.
clinical depression, but we're just talking about like the two types that I read about were like, the first one's like a reaction to practical implications relating to loss.
That's what happens when you do stuff live and you still have a family.
Yeah. And there's like, you have sadness and regret, and there's this constant worry. Say you have like, we had medical bills, we had a funeral, like to burial costs and all these things that are piled up on you, plus the loss of your loved one. So there's a lot of worry and all that stuff.
So I think an overwhelming feeling, that's
Yep.
those are feelings that I know I associated with when I have been in stages of depression, is I feel very overwhelmed and crippled, like I feel paralyzed almost to, and not only paralyzed in the sense, sometimes I feel paralyzed and I want to move, but depression is when I'm paralyzed and I don't even care.
And you
I
don't
don't
want
want
to
to
move,
move.
yeah.
I'm perfectly kind of comfortable doing nothing, or comfortable just being depressed, which, yeah. So, Josh, you're carrying the load here.
Yeah, like we've mentioned before, I don't know if I've got to that phase or part yet. Obviously,
in a
what
sense, I
phase or
think
part
kind
are
of
you
in a
talking
sense,
about?
because the other day
depression.
you kind of mentioned like you didn't have any feelings.
Yeah, but I kind of take more of that as I mean, if that's your definition of depression, yeah, I kind of take that more as, for me, as denial, and kind of anger. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
See,
I
yeah,
don't
for me,
know.
I like when we talked about this, I'm like, I don't think I ever went through depression, but like if it is what it like having that constant worry and that constant like sadness and regret and not being able, not feeling anything, because I guess that goes into numbing too, right?
Sure.
So I
And
think it
these-
is.
And these
very-
things overlap, and you can be having many of these simultaneously. That's okay. And hopefully one of the stages of grief, and I guess it's probably the climax or the goal of grieving, is to finally realize and come to the fifth one that we were going to talk about tonight, is acceptance. Really, and all of these, we may not be using the exact social, politically
Yeah.
correct definitions or whatever, but acceptance is, for us, is what we're talking about, is coming to a point where you're okay is not the right answer for it, but you're willing to move on in a healthy way, and you're not even move on, but willing to move forward in a healthy way, where you can, if you come into these stages later, you can acknowledge it, but you accept it, and then you just learn to move forward while you're in that depressed phase, or move forward while you're angry, or move forward recognizing that you still might be willing or wanting to bargain or to find happiness. But
because I think I remember listening to a girl who had depression, not from a loss or anything, it was just something, and she said she still lives with it, but now she has the keys to be able to deal with it in healthy ways. So we're always gonna, as long as we live, we're dealing with the loss of our daughters, but we're gonna be able to find keys and tools to deal with that and to, I guess, accept it, right?
yeah, and grief doesn't ever fully leave, because we're going to always grieve the loss of, or that hard thing.
Remember the other day when you guys had a term that I didn't like at all?
Oh, the
And,
privilege.
What is that?
Privilege. And remember, I was getting really frustrated. And obviously, I have told them, like, you guys.
Give them a context for what we were talking about.
No, they just said, looking back,
It's
this has been a privilege. And when he used that word, it made me almost
Angry.
It did make me angry and mad, because I just turned to him and I'm like, this is not a privilege for me at all. I don't know.
Sucks.
I don't know how you could say that right now, and I don't know how someone could put that there. But from their perspective, obviously, their privilege came from this process and what they've been able to do with it with their lives. But right now, I don't see the end of the tunnel per se. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's why we're doing this, is because, yeah, I don't see it yet, but it doesn't mean it's not out there. It's just like I still feel kind of numb,
He's so far reached and
I
is even reached.
still angry, I'm still denying the situation and bargaining. So the whole acceptance is so far from my realm of understanding right now, but that's okay. That's okay, because I have others around me that will tell me this is a process, and I can relate to that.
And acceptance, I think, is also, acceptance is something that, along with grief, all of these may be lifelong processes, and it's okay to find yourself. I guess our hope would be that through grieving, like Shannon and Josh have mentioned a couple times, that we don't have to spend the next 30 or 50 or 60 years of our life living miserable because something hard came. Is it okay to hurt through that process? Absolutely. Is it okay to cry? Absolutely. Is it okay to get angry from time to time over it? Absolutely. All these things are natural and okay. But hopefully the goal for all of us is to get through and carry this grief in a way that's healthy for us and our families. And I don't know, when I just in terms of Josh's mention of privilege, we have seen so far, 18 girls receive dance scholarships that would have never received it. We've seen track scholarships given to 2 individuals that would have never had a track scholarship. We've seen thousands, literally thousands and thousands of acts of kindness performed to people that would not have ever had that opportunity. We've seen youth do things other than social media as a result of this. We've had just so many good things, and we've seen thousands of lives changed, not to say the least our own. And so that part of it has certainly, and it makes sense. And I told Josh, I said, it's kind of ridiculous that we're even having this conversation with you guys right now, because it's like it just happened. Of course, and nobody wants to go through and seek a privilege of losing a child, but what Stacy and I have been able to experience as a result of the way that we've felt compelled to deal with it has been absolutely a privilege. So
what it is we feel very privileged to be able to help in the way we have, and to be able to truly mourn with those that mourn, and to have empathy with them. Like it's been a privilege to be able to help Shannon and Josh.
So we're going to be talking about each of these in greater detail over the next several weeks, with Josh and Shannon teaming up on their own, and Stacy and I on some of them our own. And we hope to get into a little bit more detail,
Experiences from our lives
and
things that have helped.
Correct.
That's what lots of people are looking for, is ways and things that we can do to help.
So last week, Shannon, what was it that you guys invited?
People to do services. So what are the services that we've done to do something for somebody on a daily basis, even if it's just smiling at someone? Last week we had a great amount of people who were actually reaching out, saying what they've done. And so hope that we can continue doing that and continue to somehow spread goodness throughout the world, because it always makes us feel better, But for this week, let's talk about what we're going to do this week. What is it? Anyone know?
I think to keep doing, just find ways that you can do good and serve others.
Yeah,
well, I thought we were talked about setting up a time at some point in the future where every month we're going to have a day.
Yes, so that's one thing that is in the works right now. We're going to have a day of kindness, which I think all of you that would like to be involved, we want you to be involved. So this is something to look forward to. But as you are thinking about this, think of ways that you can help your community, help your neighbors. We're starting kind of within our community, and then we'll kind of get bigger. But just look around, open your eyes, and start serving even just your family in different ways as well.
So maybe an invitation that just is in my mind right now is, we've talked a lot about with our families today. Today we had all of our children share with everybody a couple of things that they've learned as a result of the loss of Layla and the loss of Lily. I know that it is a healthy process to write what's in your heart and what's in your mind, even if it's ugly, even if it's full of yuckiness. When you write something down, or get it out in the way that's good for you, whether it's drawing a picture, whether it's writing it, whether it's putting it to a poem, whether it's singing it, whether it's arting it, whatever.
Voice.
Talking out loud into a dictation. So getting it out but doing it in a way that you can record those things so that when you're in a stage and you record these things, when you're not in that stage and look back, it will be very clear to you how helpful that was to maybe help you emerge out of that or to get through or process through that event. So maybe there's something, an invitation that we could leave with them to take some time this week to write where you're at. Who cares where you're at?
Yeah.
Just
Choose one of the
recognize
options.
the phase of grief that you are in and write how you feel and write why you think you're in that phase. And if it involves many of them, just write those things down.
And if you're watching this right now and you're comfortable with it, I know many of you are very comfortable about talking about your story and sharing your story. Write it down below here where we're watching and just telling us which one are you in. You're in denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Which stage are you feeling at that you can actually identify where you're at right now?
And and with that said, if you're in that stage, why do you think you're in that stage? Sometimes you have to ask yourself, why am I here? And how I came to this point. Am I angry because I'm angry at myself, someone else, or God? I'm in denial because of what? And that's the one thing that's helped me is I have to ask myself, Josh, what is this going to do for you when it's all said and done? Like, is this really going to lead you to where you want to go? But sometimes those questions are hard to ask.
But it is important to just let yourself go through each of these things too. Don't try to
kick yourself out
or suppress it. Like, to actually go through it, it is going to hurt. It is really painful, but to actually do it is actually the opposite of what you think. It's actually healing.
It sounds a lot
It
like
seems
Lamaze.
like it won't. It seems like it wouldn't be healing, but it is.
It sounds a lot like my Lamaze classes that we took very first, like going through birth. It's going to be painful.
There's
not going to want to do it, but it's if you just go through it, face it, and recognize it.
Okay.
There's something that really touched me this week. Though we watched something, and maybe I'll post it later. But it was about somebody who had a big accident. But they said this guy kept on yearning and yearning to take away the pain. And they said, if you take away the last 9 years or how many years you've had with that one child, the pain will be gone. You won't remember any instances with that child or the love that you felt.
You hurt so bad because you love that person so much.
Yes. So would you rather take those memories away and not feel that pain, or would you rather have that pain and remember the memories? So that's something to really think about. And I would way rather have my Layla in my life than not have her at all. For 19 and a half months, I feel we were shortened big time. And sometimes it's a really big, I get mad over it, I get sad over it. And then there's other people who have him for 13 years, and there's other people who have him for 85, 100 years. And we aren't to say, but we have to take what we had with those kids and really just love what we had with them too.
So we're next week we're gonna do anger. Stacey and I will be doing on anger and blame.
So who's ever angry, get on here.
Yep. So they'll do it. So we'll see you next week at the same time.
Well, yeah.
6 o'clock.
Yep.
8 o'clock Eastern time.
Thanks for joining, you guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support and all the great comments, just being involved in this journey with us.
Bye.
Bye.